Hey guys, thanks so much for purchasing my alcohol ink brushes for Procreate. I'm really excited about these brushes and I'm really enjoying using them myself. I'm looking forward to putting up a lot more tutorials and walkthroughs. But today I just wanted to do a very basic tutorial just to get you started as the first point to sort of explain what the different brushes are, what they do, and also how to open the file in the first place. I have downloaded it to my iPad, and you just want to make sure you're on this Browse tab. It doesn't work right in Recents for some reason. But when you're on the Browse tab, you need to go to, it would probably be on my iPad if you have downloaded it directly from the download link. So you see I have this amazing alcohol ink.zip right here. And all you have to do now, thank you, Apple, is just tap the file and it will uncompress this zip file. So now you have the whole folder, tap the folder, and within the folder you see there is this cheat sheet and instructions, which has a written description of each brush and what it does, so that if you forget something from the video or you don't even want to watch this video, you can just go straight to that and reference if you forget what a brush does and you want to look for a brush that does a certain thing or whatever. So that's all there for you, along with the Dropbox link and some links to all of the different tutorials here on YouTube. And then we have the amazing alcohol ink brush set. These are the brushes themselves. There are 34 brushes in here, and I'll show you that in just a moment. This is the swatches palette, which is also a Procreate file. So I'm gonna just tap each one of these and it will open in Procreate. Okay, so it's importing. It might take a couple minutes because it's a fairly big file. It's about 200 megabytes. Once you tap the brushes, you can go in here and scroll all the way up, and I've already downloaded it more than once, but you'll see it here at the top. And then if you want the swatches file as well, just go right back to that folder and tap the swatches file. And then this one's not opening straight in Procreate, so you can also hit this button up here, share, and then scroll all the way across, and you might have to hit more and go down here to open in Procreate. So I'm not sure why it's making me do this for the swatches and not the brushes, but you might have to do this for either one of those files. Just hit open in Procreate, and then it will be in your swatches up here. Amazing alcohol ink metallics, and there's not a lot of colors up here. It's just a couple of colors which I have vetted, and I know for a fact that these ones look good in Procreate with these metallic brushes. So you can use any color. Those are just my suggestions. Okay, so on to the brushes themselves. Excuse me. Okay, these first three are the metallic brushes: metallic ink splatter, metallic ink liner, and foil liner. So I'm going to show you what they look like with these swatches here. I'm just going to choose that one there. And I've got the splatter brush. So this is the one that I suggest starting with if you're going to add metallics. This is probably the best one and the easiest one to use. The metallic liner is a bit smaller, and it's good for really fine work, really small line work, or like really precise line work, whereas the splatter covers a lot more space and a lot less time. So I'm going to start with this one, and this is not like a work of art. I'm just showing you, for instructional purposes. But this is what it does. And the harder you push, the bigger it gets, and also the shinier it gets. So I'm pushing really hard right here, see, and that gets like almost invisible on the white background. Let's do it on here. So you see that it looks like the light is bouncing off right here where I pushed really hard. So the way that this works is that you can sort of control where the light is coming from, because that's what metallics are all about. So, if the light source is over here, you can make it not quite so shiny over here, and then like super shiny. I hope it makes sense what I'm saying here. You can actually control where it looks like the light source is coming from with this, and you can have really small bits of glitter, or you can have a whole bunch of glitter in a really big area like this. Okay, so that one is a really fun brush, and it's the one I would suggest starting with if you're working with metallics, and you know, seeing from there if you feel like you need something smaller or something more solid. So the something smaller is this one, metallic ink liner, and I'll just show you that one briefly as well. That one is just very, very small, very fine, and once again, the harder you press, the more shiny it gets. And I will show you the foil liner. This one is a little bit different. It's more solid. And it looks like gold leaf. That's what it's meant to look like. So it doesn't cover, like completely cover the area you're going over. Well, it does if you push hard. If you don't push that hard, like, then it will be a little bit like flaky like that. Or if you push really hard, it will be big and light, just like the other ones. So, and you can use any of these metallic brushes together with each other. Like, I like to use the foil. Obviously, I mean, this looks really bad, but I'm just showing you. I like to use a blob of foil and then like go over the edges with the splatter just to sort of spread it out. And so it doesn't look quite so harsh like that. So anyway, you can mix and match any of these brushes, and you can use them in any color. They don't need a clipping mask, but some colors might look a bit weird. So just experiment with what colors you're going to end up using. Okay, so those are the metallic brushes. So moving on to the color changing brushes. There's 5 of these, and they're best used in sort of a large size, and they're really good for starting out as a starting point, or they're good for adding little realistic looking accents sort of around your painting. These are all made with real textures, so they're not quite as customizable as some of the other brushes, but I wanted to include some varying textures that came from real alcohol ink paintings, just so you can add little accents to make it look a little realistic. So I'll just show you one of these here. I'm going to figure out what color I'm going to use here. I'll just do purple. Okay, so here in the corner, I'll just show you. Oops, I wasn't on a layer that was turned on. Here we go. Okay, so it comes out in varying colors, and this is still based on the color that you have chosen over here. So that was purple. If I go and choose this turquoise, it's going to come out differently, and this is also a different brush I've selected here. So it's still based on what you choose color-wise, but with some variation to make it look more realistic. That one's probably my favorite. That's number 3. I want to show you in a peach color too, because it looks so cool. So yeah, that was number 3. Here's number 4. This one is based on, there was a painting that I made, an alcohol ink painting that had this little bit of yummy texture right in the middle. And I made a pattern out of it and put it into this brush because I loved it so much. And then number 5 has got some little curly cues inside of it and some ripples. So anyway, those ones are fun. These here, texture inkers, these are also have a pre-made texture inside of them, but they are a little bit more customizable. They're pressure sensitive, and they come out with this texture and then a sort of slightly darkened edge around that, so that it looks like it's, you know, sort of part of the texture. Excuse me. So there's another one. This one's a bit more wobbly on the edges, and another. Okay, those are the texture inkers. And those, when they overlap like this, They do not blend with each other, and this is most of the brushes in here because it's very limited what you can do with the brush if it's going to blend when you do this, but I have blender brushes that you can use to blend these together. Okay, so the next one is Disappearing Ink. This is a really fun one. You know what? I think I'm going to show you that one in just a minute. Okay, I'll show you the splatter brushes first. So we've got 4 different kinds of splatter brushes. We've got color splatter, white splatter, dense splatter, and mister. The color splatter and the white splatter are exactly the same, except for the white splatter is more solid, because if you're splattering white or light colors, they just didn't look good with this one. They needed to be more solid, so it looked like you're splattering isopropyl alcohol onto the canvas, and when that happens in real life, it just has these little circles that sort of seep out. It's beautiful. So this is the color splatter. You can make it big or small. You can tap it. You can, do a stroke with it. And a fun look with this is to do a lot of different colors sort of on top of each other, which is a fun look that you can do with real alcohol ink too. I'll just show you very, very quickly. Okay, something like that. That's really fun. So the white is exactly the same. Like I said, it's called white, but it doesn't actually come out white unless you select white there. So just so you know, hope that's not confusing. And this one is more like you can tap it on the edges to add these dots as if you were taking a paintbrush with alcohol on the tip and just going like that. Because I do that a lot with my real paintings. I just like tap it and then it puts little dots everywhere. So that's what this one is meant to look like. And once again, small, big, you can tap off the canvas just to see if a couple of little dots appear randomly. So yeah, that's how that one works. Okay, so moving on to the dense splatter. It's very much the same as the other two, except there's a lot more of it. So yeah, if you want to go completely crazy, with a whole lot of splatters, this is your chance. And this is similar to using a toothbrush, for instance, on a alcohol ink painting. The next one is Mister, which is a brush I'm particularly proud of because it's like using a misting brush and it looks very realistic. If you sort of do small circular motions like this and then just sort of experiment with your pressure, you can get a really interesting look where some of it's dark, some of it's light, and it gets sort of blurry when it's close together in the middle. And this is very, very similar to real alcohol ink. So I'm hugely happy about this brush. Love this brush. Give it a go. See what you think. Okay, so this next one is called Circle Dropper / Thick Brush Stroke. And I'm sorry for the long names. Some of them I've given long names because I just want to try and make it clear what they do so you don't have to go back to this video or the reference sheet. But these next 4 right here are similar in that they are they're putting ink down in sort of a brush strokey kind of way. The first 2 blend automatically with each other and the next 2 do not. So that's the main difference there. So the first one, I think this is one of the most important brushes in the pack, really. You can use it to make a brush stroke like this. And it will blend. If you go over it multiple times, it sort of blends with what's below it. So this is fun to do a ribbon technique, and I'll do another video about that. But this is good for that. Something else this brush is good for is dropping circles down, literally. So like what I was saying earlier about how when you go like this, you could splatter alcohol onto the painting. In the same way, what you could do with a paintbrush is you could put alcohol right on the tip or ink right on the tip, and then you just touch it and it goes spreading out really interestingly into a nice circle. So this brush is meant to emulate that. So you can go like right on the edge of something like this and sort of do a very small circular motion, and you have this nice drop with a ring around it, and it pushes whatever's already on that layer out of the way. So here I'm going to do it again, and you can get a different effect depending on how much pressure you put in. And it's darker if you don't have a lot of pressure like that. And you can make it small. It looks good small and large. You can go over the spot more than one time if it, for instance, doesn't fully erase what's there. That one did. Sometimes it doesn't. So then you can go over it again and get more rings, and it looks really interesting like that. You can do this in white as well. Okay, and the next one is called Blended Brush Stroke, and it's similar in that it blends with what's below it, but the difference is that it's meant to look like a paintbrush, and when you use a paintbrush on alcohol ink, it's not like a smooth stroke. It'll like creep out in weird ways along the edges, and it pulls up along the edges, so that's what this is meant to look like. And you have to be careful with this brush because if you go too fast, it looks really weird. So you can just go ahead and start going deliberately in a certain direction, and you can see that it gets a little bit weird and jiggly along the edges, and sometimes it'll just splatter like this. You can go over the same area multiple times, and you just have to be careful not to turn too quickly because it just gets weird when you do that. Like this. Woo! So you don't want to do that. This is another one that's good for ribbon effects, and it can be very unpredictable, which is how alcohol ink really works. So you kind of want that. Okay, and this one is similar. This one's called Static Brush Stroke. It's similar, but it doesn't blend, and it can be a little bit darker. So it has this nice ripply effect on the edges, and sometimes it splatters, but that's okay. Okay. So you see when it crosses over, it doesn't blend. That's the main difference there. Sometimes you want that, sometimes you want it to blend. This one is similar. This one's called Light Stroke / Infinity Rings, and it's similar to the Circle Dropper, but it doesn't blend. So you can make an interesting circle with that, and it doesn't really uncover what's below it. And if you push really hard, you just get a ring. Or you can make infinity rings with this. It's a really good one for that. So if you've seen on alcohol ink paintings where there's these really interesting sort of flowery shapes that people make where the edges, it's just like going around in circle in these darkened edges, you can do that with this. And you can make flowers with it, and it can be really fun. So that's why I call it infinity rings. This is probably the best one for that. Or just leaving sort of a ring like that. Okay. The next one is called, well, there's two here. They're called ink pool edgers. There's the regular one, which is this one. Then there's one called Color Clone. And that one just does exactly that. It picks up the color from where you start. Both of them are directional, so they will detect what direction you're going in. One of the sides is smooth and the other is bumpy. And this is good for edges like this one. If you just start out going along it like this, it kind of looks like the ink is building up along the edge. And you can see if I go in the other direction, it's going to put the ink on the other side like that. And this one will pick up whatever color you put on it from your palette, whereas the Color Clone ink pool edger picks up color from where you start to draw. So I've got the red selected. Oops, I'm going the wrong direction. I've got the red selected, but it's still showing up green because it's going over top of green. So this one's good if you don't want it super pronounced, or if you don't want to bother going and changing the color all the time. So it can come, yeah, it just depends on where you start. It takes that color. Okay. The next two they're similar to these ones that we looked at up here at the top. Oops, not the gold. These ones, because they are a good starting place if you're doing a more complex piece. There we go. it's a good starting point. So the pressure inker, it just plops some ink down, and then if you keep going over it or you push harder, it gets lighter where you push. And the flat inker is all pretty much the same, except it doesn't get lighter. And it can be a bit crisper on the edges. So if you want these edges showing, then this might be the one to choose. Okay, the next, after a flat inker, everything after that is a blender brush. So that's why I started out with something already on the canvas, because I wanted to show you what these brushes do, but actually they don't put any pigment onto the canvas. They actually just interact with what's already there. I hope that makes sense. So this one is called airbrush. So I'll show you. Nothing happens when you do this because it's meant to interact with what's already there. So with alcohol ink painting, if you use an airbrush, you can sometimes see these really amazing flowers that people make with an airbrush, and that's kind of what I was going for with this one. So if you start, on your ink and make sort of a flicking motion outwards, you can get these cool petal shapes, which is what would happen with a real airbrush. And if you do it right on an area where there's two colors, you can get an interesting two-tone effect, and it can just sort of blend together like that. So you can make some really interesting flower shapes with this. And again, I'll do another tutorial for that. But this one is just for a very smooth look. That is what you can get with an airbrush. The next blender brush is Spray Blender, and it's very similar to Mister up here, but it doesn't put any ink on the canvas. It only interacts with what's already there and blends it together. So if you put it over here, nothing happens. But again, you can have an interesting look by going off the canvas, and then it will sort of splatter onto what's there. So that's an interesting way to add a little tiny bit of texture, not too pronounced. This one is called Hair Dryer. Another one I think that's really important, because what people do with alcohol ink is they will put down the ink, and sometimes they'll put some isopropyl alcohol on it, and then they'll just blow it with a hair dryer, and the whole thing just moves, and it's beautiful. So this is what's supposed to happen with this brush. And what you can do is you can start off pushing pretty hard, and you get this nice edge, but not much else. And then you go again, not quite pushing as hard, and you get more edges. And then push a little bit less hard the next time, and just keep doing that, maybe like 3 or 4 times, and it really looks like you've been blowing it with a hairdryer. So that is a really fun way. You can really just vary the pressure, and you can get some fun edges or not. It's up to you. So that's the hairdryer. The next one is a heat gun, also a very important one. So that's actually what I've used on this blob right here. That's been the heat gun. And a very unique look to alcohol ink is these ripples that you get when you're using a heat gun. I'll show you actually what a real heat gun looks like. Something like this. It's very hot when it comes out. And you use this to get these really cool ripples because the ink dries so fast. So the ink will dry really fast, and it comes out with these really amazing ripples. So I really wanted to emulate that digitally. So what we can do with this is wherever you start, it doesn't make anything come on to the screen without the ink that's already there. So you start on the ink that's already there, and you take it and sort of grab it, and you could move outward with it. You can do it again. And depending on where you start from, you can even just keep going and have all these delicious ripples right within there. You can take it inward, and then it will sort of lighten what you've already got there. And I'm moving in very gentle circular motions. That's kind of the motion that you want with a lot of these brushes, is just a small circular motion. And this one is directional, so if you're going in one direction, you don't like it, you can always turn around and go in the other direction and see if you like that better. And you don't have to do little circles. You can just kind of go crazy with it and just see where it takes you. This one's really fun to use just kind of intuitively. And if it starts to get a bit muddy like this, that's not very ripply. You can grab it from the edge a little bit and then pull it over, and then you've got some more. Or you can even like take it from another color and drag another color across and add these ripples. So this one, you can just kind of go crazy with it and have a lot of fun emulating that heat gun look. And I'm going crazy already now. I need to stop and show you some more brushes. So anyway, that's one of my favorites. That's a really fun one. Okay, so moving on. Okay, so I didn't show you that disappearing ink up there because I probably should have just put it down here. But it goes really well with this one. This is a blender brush called Negative Space Ring Blender. Terrible name. But basically what it does is you can go on the edge of your painting, and again, small circular motions, and it sort of leaves a ring. It takes what you got there and it sort of drags it up in one direction, and you can go in the other direction and drag it up in the other direction. And this is kind of what would happen if you put ink or alcohol right on the tip of a paintbrush, and then you dot it there, and then it just creeps inward and leaves this beautiful circular shape, this perfect circle right there. So I waited with the disappearing ink because I wanted to show you what that looks like on top of this. So going back up to disappearing ink, which was up here, I'm just going to grab this color. Okay, so what you can do with the disappearing ink, I'll first explain. Okay, it's called disappearing ink because you put it down and then you push and you push, and then suddenly you push really hard and the whole thing basically disappears and leaves a tiny ring. So it's really good for having control over exactly how much is showing. So in this case, maybe I want a darkening around this edge. So I'm going to go ahead and make a circle with the disappearing ink here. And now that I've got it like that, I'm going to press harder and just erase these edges. And then I'm just going to like vary my pressure quite a bit here. I'm going to let up on the pressure to make this inside of the circle gradual. And on the outside, it's still nice and harsh. This looks really good with gold on it, or you can just leave it like this. You can do it in black for a darker look. So it's a really interesting look that you can do, combining the negative space brush and the disappearing ink over top. Okay, so let's move back down here. Okay, so the next brush is called Heavy Bleed Blender. And this one is meant to look like if you are blowing the ink in one direction and it's getting ripply in the direction you're blowing in, on the other side it's actually going to have a really nice fade. And so that's what this one is meant to look like. So you just take it and with a light touch, sort of drag it outward like this. And you can use it also to blend two colors together like that. Well, maybe a little bit slower like that. And the direction that you're going in, that's the direction it's going to pull what's already on the canvas. So this one can be just really nice to add little bits of blending here and there. If you want to take away some of the harsh edges and just give it more of a realistic look, you can just sort of go around the edges with this, adding little bits of interest here and there. So that's a really useful brush as well. The next one is called Streaky Edge Bleed, and this one is not as much that it drags. It just drags a little bit, and it's more of a streaky sort of look. So this is just if you want to have just like a little smear. This one's not as good for blending two colors together, but if you want a little bit of blending, then that'll work. And this one is called Drip Bleed. And sometimes if you are blowing the ink in one way or another, it'll sort of like go off on these little like splatter trails everywhere. So this one is meant to do that. So you can look like it's had a little drip coming out like this. And I'm letting up on the pressure, and then it has this little drip. It gets darker at the end, so it looks like it's been dripping in that direction. And you want to start well within. Don't start like right on the edge, because it sort of pulls it. So you want to start well within it, and then just like sort of ease up on the pressure to make it look like it's dripping in that direction or getting pushed in that direction. So these last two, I lied actually. I said that all of these only interact with what's already there. These ones do actually add color to the screen, but they're not meant to be by themselves. They're meant to add texture on top of something. So let's just grab that pink and I'll show you what I mean. So oops, that's really big. I'm going to put the size down a bit, and I'm pressing very lightly, and if you add a bit more pressure, you'll see this sort of wrinkly texture sort of comes up. So if you just want it to look like in a certain area, if you want it to look like it's got more of a realistic texture, that's where you would use this. And the other one is the same. It's just, instead of a wrinkly ripple texture, it's the ink depth texture that I showed you earlier that was on one of the brushes as well. So it gets this sort of like really textured look that alcohol ink can sometimes do, which can add some interest. Okay, so those are all of the brushes, and I hope that I covered everything in this video. If you have more questions, or if you have a particular technique or look that you want me to show, I would be happy to do that. So just give me a message on social media or an email, and let me know what kind of tutorial you're looking for, and I can add it to my list. But I hope that you are enjoying the brushes, and I hope that this was clear, and yeah, just enjoy, and happy inking.